So, this is hardyhuman.com. It's a little bit of a different video for me, and this is a video on emotional intelligence. I'm so excited to share this with you guys. I've been studying emotional intelligence with John and Robert here for the past few months, on and off, and for me, this has changed my life because I'm finally starting to understand what's going on in my body in relation to my emotions. And that makes a massive difference both in my own life and how I interact with everyone and everything. It's life-changing. So, John, Robert, thanks for hanging out with me. What is emotional intelligence to you?
Well, emotional intelligence requires the ability to drop down under the level of consciousness that we commonly converse and relate through. It requires being able to drop down into the body through sensation, to actually be able to feel our way into what's actually going on in our system, and to be able to navigate our feelings, being able to be in touch with what's actually happening, the emotions that are moving through us, being able to feel and articulate those. It requires the capacity to be able to notice the mind and what's happening in the mind and the stories that are playing out in the mind. The mind's a story machine. To be able to be aware of the stories and be able to articulate the stories that are in the mind. And fourthly, to be able to navigate what's happening with you on a spiritual level, what's happening in the deep silence of your being. I think it's uncommon. I find I'm surprised how uncommon it is, particularly in the masculine consciousness, to be in touch with all of that, because we're so affected in the masculine nature by our ape nature, which draws a lot of attention, and it's a real part of what we are. It needs to be welcomed. It needs to be a part of what we're doing. Men tend to polarize into, the macho masculine, which denies the consciousness, which denies the heart, and which focuses on the ape nature, and is subservient to that. Is interested in dominance, in mating rights, in power and control games, and then there's the the masculine that is more the new age masculine, which focuses exclusively on the consciousness and tries to deny and repress the ape nature. Emotional intelligence requires the ability to navigate all of that, welcome all of that to the party, and be able to express, use self-disclosure to be able to express and explore in a real way what's actually going on in our being. What would you say, Robert, in that?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the moment when you asked the question, there was a silence, and what I experienced was this moment of like, oh my God, what do we do now? Because there's a question, and for me, instead of going with it, I'm interested in what if we don't rush on to the next moment? What if we stay in the discomfort of not quite knowing what this moment is? Like, you made a beautiful presentation to the camera, and then we're moving into another moment, and there's this, we're all turning a corner, and there's this sense of like, what's actually here in this moment? And I think for me, a lot of emotional intelligence comes from the willingness to stay present with the silence, with the unknown in this present moment. And particularly for men, I think there's a particular flavor of emotional intelligence that I think of as masculine, which is that I think there's some way in which the feminine has a better grasp of relationship than the masculine. The feminine intellect is very, very finely attuned to social interactions in a way that the masculine consciousness isn't. And what we have instead of that as men is this capacity to be deeply present in silence. And then it's out of our silence that there's a intuitive knowing that may not have that many words to it. But when women talk about wanting a man who's kind of got that rock-like quality, I think there's something about the way the masculine can be in its presence, in the present moment, which is what we as men are needing, and it's also what women are needing from us. That we don't
Fantastic.
rush into the next thought.
Just be present with them and with yourself. What kind of work do you guys do with men in these workshops? And I guess I could describe my own experience a little bit in that I've done workshops with these guys, and one of the things we focus on is understanding what's going on in our bodies in relation to emotion and how that happens when we're interacting with another man. Because it's something that I definitely personally wasn't taught to do on an intelligent level growing up in the Canadian prairie. It was all about, like you said, John, it was all about competition. It was all about fear. It was all about threats. It's like, how do I measure up to my buddies? How do I measure up to the guy that I'm working with? Is he making more money than me? Are women going to be more interested in him than me, right? And so I guess I've found that in doing these workshops, I can just relate to men on a much deeper level. And I feel like that's, like I've been missing out on this for, the majority of my life. And now there's just such a richness and a potential to kind of really almost take myself to a new level, because I feel like I'm sort of being jump-started by the relationships that I'm having with these other guys, right? Whereas before it was, I really preferred the company of women because I just couldn't relate to men. It just didn't make any sense to me. But now I'm finding that I do. I just have to sit and, like you said, sit in that discomfort sometimes, and then just see how that fleshes out. And sometimes it is that uncomfortable space, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I just want to say something about the discomfort, and I think that a lot of growth work, it seems to me, has this kind of idealized self that we're trying to create. And and I think the truth is that, like John was saying, we have this huge biological heritage of so many generations are in our cells of what it is to be masculine, and it often involves a kind of competitive relating, and it's really uncomfortable to acknowledge the whole spectrum of desires that are in us as men. We have this incredible relationship with spirit, but we also have this animal physiology, and so to relate to other men and have the intelligence actually to be with each other without getting taken away by those automatic competitive instincts, I think takes great skill and great courage, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I think the courage is a really key aspect, because for, I don't know what we figured out, 100,000 generations, we have been, run by this ape consciousness that has taught us that if we do not watch out about the other male apes, they're going to take the women, they're going to take the food, they're going to dominate us, and we're not going to survive.
Right.
So for us to open our hearts and open our consciousness to another man and be vulnerable and revealed, and to self-disclose what's really going on in us, and to be in a position of vulnerability, is counterintuitive. It's not only not what we're trained in, it's not what's instinctual in us. What's instinctual is this whole ape heritage, and you have to go against that to become emotionally intelligent. It's like you're working uphill against all of those pre-existing conditions. And it's a real heroic journey. It's the true masculine hero's journey. And as you can see in the groups that we do, you watch how much men get out of that journey. Like even in just having a couple of hours a week that we get to work with it, men are just lit. We have men in the last group just saying, God, they just felt like they were changing the world by the work they were doing in the group. I was like, really? Wow, that's a big statement.
It's true. I kind of feel that way. I'm definitely changing my own world and the world that I interact with. I came away from this last week feeling like this is meat and potatoes. This is the stuff. This is the bones of like what makes my experience up. And all the other conversations I have about my job and my car and what's happening in the hockey arena, it's like fluff. It's gone, right? It's so temporary. And bones stick around for a long time, right? They're dense, they're heavy, and they give structure to things. And this feels like bones to me. And so when I talk about this with other people, they're super jazzed on it because it's not something that most men have any sort of idea about. And that's why I see myself eventually coming out as, is that I want to help further this work, kind of, whether it's just in my personal life or working with my patients as a physiotherapist or just in being a hopefully solid dude. For lack of a better phrase.
Yeah. And like Robert was saying, really the capacity to navigate the discomfort is so key. And it's key for men to hear that that's a really important male value.
Super important.
Is to be able to navigate that discomfort. Because that's what I always hear in my couples counseling from women of what they're actually wanting from men in their life. Is that, could you just be with the discomfort of hearing our feelings?
Right.
Of hearing what's happening for us and not need to change it.
Instead of trying to fix it.
Yeah, we don't need you to fix anything. We just want you to hear us. It's the same of what men want from other men. Can you just hear? And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful to sit in the group and watch men really connect. Really say meaningful things to each other. Get scared. With what they're revealing about themselves.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, want to say something about hardy humans, which is
right.
Yeah, and I like the what you're doing. It seems to me is very much dovetailed with what we're talking about. That I think historically, to be a hardy human, to be a man and hardy human, was to be able to bear physical discomfort and to be physically strong. To have courage more in a physical circumstance, and our physical bodies are really important, but I think in the 21st century those qualities often get played more across like a psychic playing field. It's more it's more the courage to face what is true about ourselves that it makes a harder human in my estimation. So
definitely.
And so it's sort of a little bit like John was saying, there's something counterintuitive, because historically as men we clamp down a lot on the internal life in order to be able to perform in difficult external circumstances.
Right.
War, farming, hunting, whatever it was, and most of us aren't called in our lives to do that kind of stuff anymore. It's just not what the life that we're leading. But all of those qualities that were useful in that way can be used within, and they're very similar qualities, like to be feeling fear or terror and not to dissociate from it, but actually to sit in the presence of an intensely uncomfortable emotion and to be able to just keep on being present to it.
Right. Be able to navigate it, like you said.
Right. Yeah.
And be interested in it. Be curious about it. See it as a teacher that's there opening another possibility, as opposed to something just to be got away from.
Right.
Something to be, pushed under the table somehow and moved away from. To actually have the courage to notice it's like, wow, this is a part of me that's been wanting to be welcomed for how long? Right. How long has this feeling been trying to just get a space for me to pay attention to it?
Right. I remember you saying once, I think it was in the fall workshop, something to the effect of owning your feelings or they will own you.
Yes.
right?
Yes, that
And
whatever you're unable to feel
Yeah.
will chase you.
yeah, you're completely had by them until you can start to understand them and be present with them.
Right. Yeah, you can either learn how to have your feelings, or your feelings will have you.
Right.
Yeah. For lunch.
For lunch. Nice. Well, I think that might be a nice way to end it, actually. You know, own your feelings or they'll own you for for lunch. But thanks for chatting, guys. I feel like you're doing super important work, and I think this has got massive potential, and you've got massive potential to make a really positive difference in the lives of men and you know, and the larger sphere of consciousness and what we're all doing here as humans, right? I think it's a really valuable thing you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jordan, for taking the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, awesome.
And for the inspiration to put us together.
Yeah. No problem. My pleasure. Cool. Okay. Well, next time, check me out at heartofhuman.com, and we'll catch you later. Cheers.